Hi guys, welcome back to Rian's POV podcast. My name is Rian, and I am so glad to have you guys here with me this week. So let's get into the episode. Sometimes it can be so easy to think that everybody else has life figured out and their lives are so easy and there's like no hardship or whatever. But I just feel like that's an illusion that our brain creates because we will see what we want to see and then we will compare ourselves to that. And it's just something so easy to fall into. And it's because we are just so overly exposed to everything. Like we have access to like when I say everything, I mean everything at our fingertips. And it's like if I want to look something up, I can like find it within a couple of seconds. And we also have social media and all of this stuff that allows us to connect with people all over the world. And sometimes it looks like other people have their lives together and you just feel lost. And I feel like especially now, like in your 20s, in your like late teens, it's so easy to compare yourself to others and just be like, well, that person's just doing so much better than I am. And it's just like these like setting these imaginary standards for yourself, and it's like, well, they have it all, how come I don't have it all? And it's just like that's the standard, and you're constantly chasing this thing that wasn't meant for you, you know what I mean? And I feel like especially with social media, like we all know we post the highlights of our lives, right? Like we're not gonna post the hardships or any negativity in any way. We just like to like show the good that's happening in our lives, and that's not a bad thing, you know what I mean? Like we all do it. And it's just like I don't know why, but our brains can kind of just be like, well, their life is perfect, and sometimes it can even make our life seem less than in any way, even though it's not in reality. And comparison itself is not like some made up thing, you know what I mean? It's not just something that we do for fun. It's deeply built into our psyche. So it's not just like something that we can turn off. And honestly, after doing so much reading, and just like working on myself for these past couple of years, I just realized that comparing things is the way that we better understand them and better understand the world around us. It's just like how we comprehend everything, including ourselves. Like we compare ourselves to better understand ourselves. And when we compare, there's actually a specific part of our brain called the ventral medial prefrontal cortex that becomes active during this time. And this part of our brain is also linked to our self-esteem, our emotional response, and also judgment. So basically, it's the part that heavily influences how we feel about ourselves in comparison to others. And honestly, comparison does have its purpose, right? Because when we compare, we figure out our like place in society, like we figure out where we stand. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this is where you are in society, this is where you'll forever be. But it's just like finding your place in the world in a sense. And there's always like lateral movement, and it all just depends on the phase in life that we are in. So there's technically two different types of comparison. There's upward comparison, where we kind of look at people that we think are doing better than us, right? And then there's downward comparison, and that's where we look at people that are struggling more than us. Both have a purpose, right? Both of them do have a purpose. And that's just like finding your sense of belonging. But without the proper training of your mind to handle these comparisons, then it's kind of easy to go into a spiral and like feel a lot of anxiety or depression. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a religious school. I went to a all Islamic school, and there was this thing that they always mentioned. They're like, yes, it's good to look at people that are doing better and that we think are better, to become better ourselves and to thrive, to be better every day. But it's also good to look at people that, or do that downward comparison where we see people that have more struggles, because it makes you more grateful for where you are and what you have, and just it kind of like humbles you in a way. And I feel like it's such like a good way of thinking, because you can sit here and complain about how your life isn't as perfect as somebody else's, or you don't have that new flashy car or phone or whatever you want to call, like, compare yourself with. But once you realize that there's people around the world that have it harder than you and that are facing more tests in life, then it's like you're more grateful for the things you have. And like when you really are grateful for what you have and in this moment in your life, because when people really say that you never appreciate what you have until you lose it, they truly mean it. And it's like, you never appreciate the health that you have today until you get sick tomorrow. So it's always good to take that moment of gratitude. And there's like gratitude journals all over the place now, and I feel like they're so good, but then sometimes you just have to look deeper, you know what I mean? Sometimes we get lost in a lot of like the superficial things in this world, that we forget to like be grateful for the things that come easy, you know what I mean? Like today I woke up, I'm healthy, I have clean air, clean water, I have food that I can eat today. So it's like all the small things to be grateful for. So the key is to honestly find balance, and when it comes to comparison, and it's just to like be in that middle ground, especially in today's day and age, just because we're so overexposed with social media and all of this stuff. And like if you don't have a good balance when it comes to comparison, it could honestly have such a large effect on your mental health. And I feel like the more we compare ourselves to others, the less joy that we'll find in life, because it's like we compare our achievements, we compare our looks, we compare literally everything. And the more we compare it to others, the more we minimize it to ourselves. And it's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. Like, look at them, they have way more, or they did way better. And that would just like take such a blow with your mental health and your self-esteem. And a lot of the times it could lead to chronic stress and even lead to depression. And it's funny because like we do it to ourselves, but we also do it to others, because sometimes parents compare their kids, teachers compare students, we compare ourselves. Like it's a constant cycle of comparison, and especially for younger people, it could take a really big blow on confidence and self-worth, because we're constantly being compared to somebody else, especially during development, because like when we're younger, it's like we're more prone to all of these social standards. We're prone to comparison, where we constantly take people's words and internalize them sometimes. And there's a theory called the looking glass self, which basically says that you end up like seeing yourself as what other people describe you as or see you as. And I kind of just feel like that's just like categorizing people and putting people in boxes. And I get it, that's the way that we understand the world, that's the way that kind of like helps us make sense of everything and make sense of people. However, sometimes you can kind of internalize those labels, those comparisons, and just like really just internalize it all. And I was kind of like dealing with that a lot lately, and I've kind of worked on it a lot this past couple of years, where I just try different things and try to get out of those boxes that I kind of like put myself in. And it's just like, you don't have to accept certain labels or titles or boxes, you know what I mean? It's just like, you can do whatever you want. Like if you really look at it, you can do whatever you want in life if it's something that you want to do and you want to put your mind to. And it's just like internalizing labels or internalizing all of these expectations and standards that society sets or people set around you. Those are just limiting factors. And if you apply those limiting factors, you will stay within that comfort zone, within those boxes that were created in your head. And it's just like, putting yourself out there is just so important. And if you want to be in a box, be in a box. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you want to explore and like try different things and like go against social norm or society's standards or whatever, do that. Like, do what you want to do. Because at the end of the day, this is honestly your life. You're writing your story. You're navigating it all for yourself. And you just gotta do you. At the end of the day, you gotta do you. So, comparison itself is something that we cannot avoid, whether we like it or not. And I feel like what's crucial is to kind of be more conscious of it and see whether it's relative outcome or if you're focusing on absolute outcome. So a lot of people, including me sometimes, we tend to focus on our relative outcome, and that's how we're doing in comparison to how others are doing. So we're kind of just like keeping score of everybody else. It's like, if I run a mile, did I do better than the person next to me that ran half a mile? You know what I mean? Like, we're comparing ourselves to others to see how well we are doing. While on the other hand, we have absolute outcome, which I've been working so hard to focus on a lot more rather than relative outcome, because absolute outcome focuses on how well that you are doing in your own terms. So it's like you're comparing yourself to yourself yesterday, and that is like honestly the best way to go, because it's like you're focusing on you and how well that you are doing and celebrating your own achievements. Like, if I ran a mile today and then tomorrow I run like 5 miles, which is like a crazy jump, it's like, hey, I did that and I did better than Rian yesterday, which is showing growth, and it's just like highlighting your own achievements and stuff like that. So it's like focusing on how well you are doing and your own growth, and not comparing it to somebody else's, if that makes sense. So since we can't entirely stop comparing ourselves or the world around us, whatever you want to compare, we can kind of like redirect it and control the way it affects us. And that's just being more conscious of it, period. So first things first, you need to find validation and self-worth within yourself. You can't seek it anywhere else, because when you're constantly seeking it externally, you're going to be chasing something endlessly, and it's like it's not going to feel as good as getting it from yourself. And honestly, the way that I did it was taking time of solitude. A lot of people do it this way, and like I'm not like the first person to do it, but it's just like taking a period of time to be alone. Then you will really learn to like appreciate who you are and build that self-love, and that will create a foundation for how you see yourself, and it will create a healthier self-image rather than allowing other people to make that image for you. You know what I mean? So we kind of like cultivate that love from ourselves, which honestly makes it less likely to like seek that validation and that love from others or from success or something physical or tangible in this world. And it just allows us to control the way that we feel about our own lives, in a sense. Another really, really big thing is gratitude. I know I mentioned it a million times in this episode, but gratitude is like one of the most powerful tools that you can use. And when we're grateful for what we have, it kind of reduces those feelings of envy and jealousy towards others, because when you're happy with what you have, why would you be mad about somebody else having something else or something that you might necessarily think is better? So just like appreciate what you have now instead of like focusing on what others have, because you can't focus on what you're doing if you're looking at somebody else. You know what I mean? Another thing is kind of just like redirecting that comparison. Instead of looking for that relative outcome, you can kind of focus on that absolute outcome and kind of focus on comparing yourself to your past self instead of others. So when you compare yourself to who you were a year ago, you can see your progress and acknowledge how far you come. And this way you can kind of see how much you've grown as a person, and just like reduce the amount of self-doubt, and it kind of like motivates you to keep going too. So the way I do it is, I know I mentioned this like a bajillion times on this podcast, but I write letters to myself all the time. And it's just like future me or current me talking to past me. So I literally, like when I tell you, I write the date on top like an actual letter. And I write like, Dear Rian, and then I write everything that's on my mind, everything that's going on. I just put it all on paper, and then I sign it at the end. So like it's literally a letter to myself. Like that's what my journal is filled with. It's not just like my thoughts or this or that. I like direct it to somebody. I direct it to myself a year ago, or myself when I was like 5, or whatever you want to do it as. Another like great reminder is to always just like keep in mind that everybody has their own path. It's so easy to think that everybody has figured out their lives or their life is so easy. Another thing that I always kind of remind myself of, and I do this pretty frequently, is to remind myself that everybody is on their own path. And it's so easy for me to like think that their life is so much better or they have it easier, because I don't see the struggles, the fears, the good and the bad, the sadness that they experience. You know what I mean? And it's everybody's first time in this game of life. So we're all just trying to figure it out as it goes. And if somebody's like kind of like succeeding in an area more than you are, then it's just like time, place, energy. Like you don't see any of the background and the pain that they had to go through to get to where they are today. So just to have that little bit of grace to everybody around me, and like it just kind of helps me not compare myself to everybody else, because it's like that's their journey. They have their own struggles that they're focusing on. Let me focus on my struggles and my journey, you know what I mean? So it's like it kind of pushes you away from the idea of everybody else's life is easy, my life is hard. And also kind of just like embracing the idea of endless opportunity. Sometimes that kind of helps me let go of comparing myself to others, is just like realizing the idea that opportunities are endless. Just because somebody else is achieving something, that doesn't mean that there's less left for me. I constantly remind myself that life is full of possibilities and that there's always other ways to grow, learn, or succeed. And when I focus on my own path and dreams and journey, it's easier to see every step that I take, big or small, and it kind of like leads me somewhere meaningful. And I just have to like trust the timing of my own journey, because things will happen when they're supposed to happen, where they're supposed to happen, and how they're going to happen. Like you can't control the outcome, so just let it go. At the end of the day, comparison is a natural part of being human, and I guess like the goal is to just find that nice balance of relative and absolute outcomes, and just like focusing on the good rather than comparing yourself to others and falling into a deep depression, because we don't want that. And just like turning comparison into something that helps us grow rather than something that brings us down. So yeah, next time you catch yourself like comparing yourself to others, take a moment to kind of check in with yourself. Ask yourself, am I focusing on my journey or someone else's? And remember that the only comparison that truly matters is the one that shows you that you are growing into the best version of yourself. Okay, so before I end this episode, I wanted to leave you guys with a poem from a new book that I got. It's called The Way Forward by I still can't get his name, Young Pibolo. Anywho, I have like 2 of his poetry books and they're honestly amazing. So today's poem of the day is: down moments will try to make you forget how much you have actually accomplished. You have overcome too much to let heavy emotions confuse you. Stop listening to the noise and ground yourself in the fact that the storm do not last forever. Anywho, thank you guys so much again for joining me this week. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to leave a comment and a review. If you guys want to connect, I am also on Instagram at AnsPOV. And as always, I hope you guys all have an amazing rest of your day. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye!